Exactly 4 decades ago, George Michael and Andrew Ridgeley were singing about hearts being given away. Well, 1 year prior to that, I celebrated my last Star Wars Christmas. So in this video, I would like to recreate the events of Christmas Day 1983 and share with you my last ever Star Wars Christmas. So it's coming right up. Welcome back. Now, almost exactly 41 years ago, I received the last of my vintage Star Wars toys for Christmas. And looking back on it, one, I simply cannot believe this happened 41 years ago. That just makes no sense to me. But when digging everything out for the purposes of this video, I was reminded how fortunate I was as a child. And I am very grateful to my parents for providing these wonderful memories for me. Now, before we get to the toys, it was round about October of 1983, I began writing a list to Santa. And the only two things I really wanted were the Millennium Falcon and the AT-AT. And my mum almost immediately shut that down. I don't know if it was because they were on the higher end of things in terms of price, or if she wanted me to have more boxes to open, but she said no, but there are many other Star Wars vehicles that you could have. So, feeling a bit bummed, I thought, well, it's still Star Wars, so that's all good. But then, later that month, at school, we received the first computer I'd ever seen, which was the BBC computer. And they had some expert come in to show its capabilities, and he even loaded up some games for us to play. And I thought, that's it, I need a home computer. And, you know, I think at the time it was ZX Spectrum and Commodore 64. And I said, that's it, that's what I want for Christmas. So went home from school that day and said, look, I've changed my mind. I don't want Star Wars. I want a computer. And my mum more or less said, well, too bad, you're getting Star Wars toys. So no computer for me. Never actually had a home computer, but it's all changed nowadays. But anyway, 1983 was my last ever Star Wars Christmas. So let's go ahead and I will show you somewhat in order of how I opened them as a kid, what I got for Christmas in 1983. So Christmas 83 got off to a flying start. Flying start. Anyway, the first gift I unwrapped happened to be Luke Skywalker's X-Wing Fighter. Now, I should point out, because I grew up in the UK, the one I received was the Palitoy non-electronic version. What I have now, electronic with the little light in the front and the molded rear end, and also the non-chromed R2-D2. But when I got this, I was absolutely thrilled because I'd already had, for many years at that point, the Luke Skywalker X-Wing pilot figure with nothing to put him in. So when I got this, this was a massive thrill for me. Now, furthermore, it was white, but it also came with the battle damage stickers that I never applied. Cannot stand those things. But I just remember as a kid unwrapping the gift, taking it out of the box, and just being as high as a kite. And then I got a tap on the shoulder. There are more boxes to open. So let's continue and see what I open next. Next up, out the package, came Darth Vader's TIE Fighter. Now this is a really cool one. I was aware that Kenner had produced the regular TIE Fighter that I'd never had up until that point. And I liked it, but I just liked the look of this one so much more. And of course, fortunately, my parents thought ahead and they also included some batteries for me. So immediately got the batteries in and started making the most god-awful sounds. But I would then take it into my dark bedroom, and having a little red light was a really big deal for a kid of that time. And I had a whole lot of fun with this. Although, looking back at my childhood, I think I used the TIE Fighter pilot in this rather than Darth Vader. I think I may have been worried about, ripping his cape or something. But Darth Vader's TIE Fighter is a classic, iconic ship from the Star Wars universe. And when I got this, I realized pretty quickly I could put this in one hand, X-Wing in the other, run about like an absolute idiot, recreating scenes from the first movie. So this was a great gift back in '83. The next gift I unwrapped was the Snowspeeder, and this was probably my favorite gift of that year. I think because I never had any of the larger ships like Millennium Falcon, AT-AT, I never had the chance to put multiple figures into the cockpit. Now, admittedly, we only had Luke Skywalker in his X-Wing pilot outfit, which technically was not the same as the Snowspeeder outfit, but in went Luke X-Wing, and because I only had one Luke X-Wing, I think I put the Rebel Soldier in the back. But this was a fantastic toy, and also had the benefit of having pretty good electronics. Now, admittedly, the sound wasn't the best, but the fact that the pulsating lights really did make me happy as a kid. And again, another of these toys that I would go into my bedroom, close the curtains, put the lights off, and just have an absolute blast hitting these buttons. Now, I always thought the sound was kind of like an old car engine starting or something, not really accurate to the sounds we had in the movie, but I think I was, what, 9 years old at the time. As a 9-year-old kid, this was the best toy I owned. And when re-buying them from my collection, I wanted one that looked nice, and this one's reasonably okay. It could do with a little bit of a clean, but the fact it did not come with the harpoon was not a big deal to me, because I think I may have lost that on Christmas Day that year, actually. I don't recall ever having the harpoon. So unless it got stuck in the box and everything was tossed out, because I should add as well, my parents had this really bad habit of letting me open a toy and then more or less immediately taking the box away and tossing it in the garbage. So I don't recall ever having the harpoon gun, but to see it again like this makes me really happy, but also does bring back a lot of wonderful memories. So having just opened 3 really amazing gifts, I had one more big box to open, and I really wished I'd done this one first because it was Jabba the Hutt's playset. Now, as a kid, I was aware of this set because I'd seen not only the TV commercial, but I'd also had one of those little catalogs, and I think that came with my speeder bike, so I knew it was available. I had no interest in it whatsoever. I've never cared for Jabba the Hutt on the screen, and for a toy, I was all about having spaceships I could run about with. This just sits on the table. Play feature, yes, but we all know in the movie the trapdoor to the dungeon opens down the way, these things open up the way. The dungeon itself is barely 2 inches high, so any prisoners basically just have to lie flat. I think this may have been used as a figure storage box for most kids. Jabba himself, he's all right. I mean, I do like the articulation where you flap his tail and his head goes, or alternatively, you can move his head and the tail wiggles, whatever you choose. The slave collar would have been of more use if they had done the slave Leia figure back then, but thankfully now, courtesy of Stan Solo, we can all put an actual Kenner style slave Leia as a prisoner. Salacious Crumb, really not something I was a fan of as a kid, and even looking at it now, it's pretty dumb. In all honesty, a rather annoying character in the movie, but this was the last of my big Star Wars gifts, but we're not quite done yet. There was one more vehicle coming my way, and I don't remember who gave it to me, but either way, I'm extremely thankful. So after the excitement of opening my 4 big gifts, I was then handed a smaller box to open, and upon getting the paper off, I had no idea what it was, but it was the AST-5. Now, from looking at the box art, I was led to believe this was a ship that was piloted by Klaatu, and I sat sort of scratching my head thinking, I don't remember seeing that in the movie, because back then I wasn't aware that mini rigs were just kind of like concept vehicles that were put out there. But I really did like this one, and it looks pretty good, and I guess you would call flying mode, but I also liked how you could do it like this and have it standing up quite securely. But best of all, I really did enjoy the sound these cannons made when you turned them. This was a very satisfying clicking sound, and I'll give you a quick demonstration. Very smooth, and of course we had the little canopy to put Klaatu in there. I think the thing about mini rigs was they gave people on all budgets a chance to own Star Wars vehicles, and this one is definitely one of my favorite mini rigs. Now, it wouldn't be a Star Wars Christmas without some figures, and I did indeed get some figures. Now, I don't remember the order I opened these in. I mean, we are talking 41 years ago at this point, but I do remember what I got. So I got Bib Fortuna, Squid Head, Klaatu. I actually got two of Klaatu. Obviously, one relative didn't speak to another and got me the same figure, and I do remember my mum saying, well, don't open the other one. And then we had a swap shop at school sometime in January, and I swapped the one I had for something, I don't recall what. I think it may have been some plastic soldiers or something, but also Weequay, Leia in her Bush disguise, Lando Calrissian in the Skiff Guard disguise, and bizarrely Forlom. So clearly these first set of figures were the current figures on the shelf for the Return of the Jedi movie, and I guess some relative thought this one was cool. And bizarrely, I had this almost a case of having card back snobbery as a kid, whereby anything on the latest movie card back seemed superior to figures that were on the previous movie's card backs, if that makes sense. So when I got these all out, before I took them off the card, I set them all up to look at, and for some reason having Forlom on an Empire Strikes Back card made him somewhat less compared to the other figures. Looking back, it makes no sense to me now, but at the time that was my way of thinking. But this was a really nice range of figures, and as you may have seen in my recent video, both these figures, Bib Fortuna and Squid Head, made my top 10 all-time Star Wars figures. So this was a really wonderful haul of figures that rounded out a really good Star Wars Christmas. So that was my last Star Wars Christmas ever. And it's only when I see everything here right now that I realize how fortunate I was as a child. And I was extremely lucky to get such a wonderful selection of Star Wars toys that year. Now, sadly, whilst I played with all of this and enjoyed it for the first few months of 1984, by springtime, I discovered Action Force, and Star Wars had just lost its luster. I was no longer collecting Star Wars. And as it is, these are the last figures I ever got for Star Wars. Same with the vehicles, obviously. Action Force just took over for me, and these were all put away. I had the Darth Vader figure storage case. Those went into that, stuck away. All the vehicles stuck away, and never to be played with again, which is quite sad looking back. But without dwelling on the negatives too much, I'm going to focus on the positive and say what a wonderful Christmas it was back in 1983. So thank you all for watching this, hearing me ramble on, but hopefully it brought back some memories for you. And if you did enjoy the video, please be kind and leave a quick like, and do make sure you are subscribed if you haven't already done so before. So this was Christmas 1983. We're approaching Christmas 2024, so I wish you all a Merry Christmas, and I will see you all in the next video.